And now, without any further delay, let's begin today's event, Using Mobile to Acquire More Customers More Securely, sponsored by Mitek, hosted by American Banker. I would now like to introduce your moderator for today, and that is Mike Fisk. Mike, you have the floor.
Thanks, Christina, and I would like to welcome the audience once again. We are grateful that you've chosen to share some of your day with us. We know that your time is valuable, and we'll honor that today with what I am confident is going to be an enlightening 60 minutes or so of discussion. Once again, our topic today is using mobile to acquire more customers more securely. And my name is Michael Fisk. I'll be your moderator today. I've been a New York-based journalist for about 15 years, and I've had stints as editor-at-large at American Banker and contributing editor at Bank Technology News. My articles have also appeared in Barron's, Crane's New York Business, Inc., Institutional Investor, Strategy, and Business and Worth. More importantly, however, are our two excellent speakers that are joining us today, and I would like to introduce them both to you now. The first is Julie Conroy. She is Research Director at IT Group, and also Sarah Clark. She is General Manager at Identity Mitek, and we're very pleased to have both with us today. Before we jump into the real meat of the discussion, I just wanted to kind of reiterate one thing that Christina said at the top. We do have time at the end for Q&A, usually about 10 or 15 minutes, and you do not have to wait until the end to put your questions in. You can put them in as they occur to you throughout the hour. Please do so. And if for some reason we run out of time, sometimes we do, and we've got lots of great content, we can't get to everyone's questions, we will follow up afterward. So please, ask away. Your voice will be heard either right this hour or afterwards. So please ask anything you'd like. And I think with that, let me turn things over to Julie. Julie, you have the floor.
Great. Thanks so much, Mike. And I'd like to add my thanks to everybody for joining us today. As we all know, the U.S. is finally the last G20 country that's embracing the EMV standard. That means great news on the counterfeit fraud reduction front, and I've actually been having a number of conversations just over the last 2 months with FIs that are seeing some pretty amazing reductions in their net losses, although gross losses are still absolutely out there. The bad guys aren't giving up just yet. But as with all the other countries that have preceded us, what happens is it's basically a zero-sum game. So the counterfeit or the organized crime rings that are behind so many of the attacks don't decide to just pack it in and go get a real job. They shift their attacks to other vectors. And we have seen in all the other countries that have preceded us that there are sharp rises in card-not-present fraud, in account takeover, and in application fraud. And the application fraud doesn't always get talked about quite as much, but it's absolutely an area of focus for the bad guys. Canada provides a great glimpse into this. So as Canada moved to EMV in 2011, from that period on, we started seeing a very steady rise in application fraud that at this point has no end in sight. I could show you a very similar graphic for the UK. Australia had a brief spike, and then the banks there actually put in place quite a number of compensating controls, and so theirs came back to prior EMV levels within a couple years of the migration. I think in the U.S. market, we're going to see additional pressure on application fraud because there is so much PII, or personally identifiable information, in the hands of the criminals right now. And so unfortunately, I think we're kind of headed for a perfect storm from an application fraud perspective. We have done some research recently, and you're actually one of the first groups that's going to get to see this. We're not publishing the report for another couple of weeks here. But in November and December, I surveyed 83 U.S. financial institutions to understand, what is their awareness of this rising tide of application fraud, and what are they going to be doing about it over the next couple of years. As you can see by this graphic, the sizes of those institutions is fairly representative of the composition of the U.S. market. So a quarter of the institutions that I spoke with were above $20 billion in assets. We saw another 42% of the institutions were between 1 and 20 billion in assets, and then the rest of them were smaller FIs below $1 billion in assets. Now, one of the interesting things that jumped out at me from the findings was that the larger institutions are largely expecting the spike in application fraud. So as you look at the largest institutions, 10 of those FIs that I spoke with are absolutely expecting to see the rise. And in fact, many of them said, we're already seeing it. We've been seeing it throughout the course of 2015. And again, since right now from an EMV perspective, we're only at about 20% of transactions are chip-on-chip. So you can't really attribute the rise in application fraud that we have been seeing solely to the EMV migration, but it is also reflective of the fact that in 2015 alone, we saw 278 million records get breached and compromised. And so there's a ton of data out there in the hands of the criminals, and they're using it. Notably, though, as we surveyed these institutions, as you get down to the smallest community banks and credit unions, many of them are not prepared for this increase in application fraud. The majority of those below $1 billion in assets that we interviewed said that they don't expect to see any change, and actually 6 of the respondents expect to see application fraud decrease in the wake of EMV. And so I think that's a bit troubling, because as we've seen, fraud often starts by targeting the biggest institutions, but then as they bolster their defenses, it does trickle down to smaller institutions as well. And as we look at the trend line on the fraud currently, we see that, again, the fraudsters didn't wait for that October 1 liability shift. In all of the remote channel types of application environments, we're seeing that the majority of FIs are seeing increases. So 25% of the FIs we surveyed saw an increase in their mobile application fraud environment. A large number of the folks that we spoke with still aren't actually accepting applications in mobile yet. Yet, I think, is the key word there. 48% of the FIs that we interviewed saw increasing application fraud in the online environment. In the branch, 62% said that their application fraud rate was flat there, and I think that just reflects how much easier it is to perpetrate this fraud in those faceless remote channel environments. On average, the institutions that we've surveyed said that they're seeing about 8 times the fraud rate in the online environment that they are in the branch environment. As a result, half of the large FIs that we spoke with do plan to add and or change vendors over the next couple of years for their new account risk assessment. And notably, only 1 in 5 of the smaller FIs that we spoke with plan to do so. Commensurate with the riskiest environments, bolstering those digital channel protections were a key priority for the majority of the FIs we interviewed. Looking to find better ways to identify that person that's coming in the door through the faceless environment, looking for ways to reduce the number of manual reviews and manual exceptions that come out of those environments, and just finding more efficient ways to make that onboarding a seamless process so that you can not only get people in the door in a more risk-free manner, but you can also get them in the door with a minimum of attrition, because we're still seeing a lot of fall off from the applications in those environments as well. As we look at the next slide, consumers, as we all know, are increasingly digital in everything we do. 65% of the U.S. population now carries a smartphone everywhere they go. We're starting to pay with our phones and even our watches. We have Fitbit to help us with our fitness. So we have this increasing population of digital natives. Interestingly, though, when that doesn't yet extend to opening new accounts. So we did some consumer research last year in which we surveyed over 2,000 consumers to understand how they are initiating relationships with financial institutions. And notably, as you can see from this graphic, 73% of the consumers we interviewed are still going into the bank or credit union branch. Now, that isn't necessarily the way they want to be initiating the relationship. So we drilled down a little bit further into those results, and we found that of those 73% that ended up in the branch, 36% of them started opening up the account either in the online or mobile channel. And then they ran into hiccups. They had questions that couldn't get answered. They got frustrated with that process. Now, 36% of those folks ended up in a branch, but it begs the question of how many people are getting frustrated with that digital account opening experience and just going away. And so that's, as I talk to FIs, that's definitely one of the things that is really concerning about the fall off that they see in these digital channels. And that manifests in where they plan to spend their money over the next few years. So one of the questions we asked as part of the research was, as you were looking at your new account risk assessment investments, what are the business case drivers? How important are these things as you're putting together your business case? And I think it's notable that improving that customer onboarding experience was one of the most important drivers for 95% of the folks that we surveyed. Closely followed, interestingly, by detecting complex fraud. So we're looking to improve that customer experience, make engagement with the financial institution a delightful experience for the customer. We're looking to detect that fraud as it's coming in the door. The thing I thought was really interesting from these results was that getting pass rates up was a distant fifth. So while it was still a priority for many people, it's driving things, it is not necessarily nearly as important as creating a better and more seamless onboarding experience and detecting the fraud along the way. One key technology that FIs are looking to as a way to improve this in the mobile channel is mobile capture and verification solutions. So as you can see by this graphic, nearly 1 in 5 of the largest banks above $1 billion in assets are either using mobile capture and verification today as part of onboarding, or they plan to deploy it in the next year or two. Another 37% of 36% of the largest banks and 63% of those banks between $1 billion and $20 billion in assets have it on their 1 to 2 year roadmap. So this is a key area of focus and kind of goes back to that earlier point I was making about how as institutions are looking to add and change vendors, focusing on bolstering that mobile and online experience is one of the key priorities for these folks. And the mobile capture and verification not only helps with the customer experience, and it's a primary driver for many of the folks that are either currently using it or have it on the roadmap, as you can see here. But it also speaks to the ability to do some of the other risk assessment. So the ability to dive into those documents, use the OCR capabilities to bring the identity data into their systems of record without the typos and the other things you often get when the data is input in a branch environment or when the customer is fat fingering it into their mobile keypad themselves. And then you can use that data to perform the KYC checks and the CIP types of assessments. There was, as part of the interviews, there was one financial institution that I spoke with that currently has 350 people decked against the exceptions that are coming from their front-end CIP processes. And so as they're onboarding the customer and trying to verify that, yes, this name and address and social security number and everything else match, 350 people are currently working with the customer to request those substantiating documents that show, yes, this really is who this person says that they are. They are in the process of deploying a mobile onboarding and data capture and verification solution. And they estimate that just the reduction in the back and forth of documents and the ability to automate the verification of those documents will allow them to cut that 350 FTE workforce in half and deploy those other 175 people in more productive customer-facing scenarios. So the KYC aspect of this, that fraud assessment of identifying documents, that is a really important driver for a lot of the folks that I've been speaking with that are exploring these solutions. And these types of solutions really do help the financial institution as they walk that fine line between customer acquisition, risk management, and compliance. It's a really tough time to be sitting in the shoes of somebody that's responsible for new account risk assessment right now, because you have all of these just competing drivers that are basically making these executives, as I spoke with them, feel like they're between a rock and a hard place. On one hand, you have the CFPB and in December of 2015, the White House coming out saying, you need to be boarding more consumers. Financial inclusion is a big priority for us. You can't be using some of the data sources you have in the past to decline people because it's excluding people from our financial system. On the other hand, we have this rising tide of application fraud. We have scores of records that contain PII in the hands of criminals, and they're actively monetizing them. We have, on the AML side of things, the regulators coming out saying you need to be doing a better job with KYC and your customer due diligence. And you need to document how you're doing that, prove how you're doing that, provide visibility into the models that are helping to do that. So it's a really challenging time to be overseeing this risk assessment, which makes bringing technological solutions to bear all the more important. So as we look at the next 1 to 2 years and what that holds for banks, they really need to be preparing for this increase in application fraud. And again, as I talk to the biggest banks, it's already here. And they have already been seeing that steady increase, not just in synthetic identities, but it's also a lot of true name fraud. We're seeing people coming into the country as students, and then as they're about to leave, they're selling their data for use in fraud. It's the J-1 visa fraud is still alive and well. We're seeing that if you can build your fraud mitigation strategy with the assumption that some of these data elements have probably been compromised, so it makes it all the more important to have robust verification of the underlying documents that are being presented. If you can do that in a way that is user-friendly and leverages the technology that is at the customer's fingertips, then you can actually start creating that delightful customer experience that at the same time brings a little bit more security to bear. So one of the tools that I am seeing being added is mobile data capture and verification. And I will turn it over now to Sarah, who will go into a little bit more detail on what MyTech's solution here is.
Great. Thank you, Julie. Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Clark, and I'm General Manager of the Identity business at MyTech. First, I'd like to say a big thank you to Julie. Really excellent summary, very well-structured research. Really appreciate that. I'll extend on the themes that Julie presented by showing you guys some demos of our MyTech Mobile Verify product, which is a mobile capture user experience providing instant identity document authenticity verification. But before I dive into the demos, I'd like to give a little bit of background about MyTech and some color about what we hear from the market. So first about MyTech, we are the global leader in mobile capture and identity verification products. We're a publicly traded company headquartered in San Diego, California. I'll be focusing on our U.S. product capabilities for this webinar, but we are a global company, and our products do support global identity documents. To that effect, we also do have offices in the Netherlands as well as the UK. Our product suite, which does extend beyond identity products, is used by over 4,500 financial service providers. Our mobile capture user experience is enjoyed by over 60 million end users and growing. So we do have the most market-vetted mobile capture technology in the world, and it has indeed been tested across the full ecosystem of iOS and Android devices. Mobile is really our DNA at Mitek. We've been innovating in mobile capture for many years. Our products do support omni-channel user experiences, but we've come at it from a mobile-first perspective. And our mobile capture is backed by a robust mobile imaging platform for which we hold multiple patents, 21 with 23 pending. So I'm going to focus on our ID document products, but we really do have a full suite of products that can help you optimize your mobile channel for safe, secure customer acquisition. If you have needs that go beyond the products that I'll be presenting in the webinar, I would love to hear from you. My contact info will be provided on the last slide of the presentation. So getting into a little bit more about our product lines. Our products, as they relate to onboarding, can be split into three main categories. So starting at the left, we start with mobile docs. Julie talked about customer experience and allowing users to capture documents as part of onboarding, and that's really what mobile docs is. So if your starting point is just to enable your end users in your mobile onboarding channel to provide documents and to make it easy for them, then this is a great starting point for you. It includes our industry-leading mobile capture as well as our patented image enhancement. So your users simply have to hover their mobile device over the required document. It'll auto-capture it for them, and in return, you'll receive a lightweight, enhanced image that's ideal for downstream storage. If your goal is to make the onboarding process easier for your end users by pre-filling forms for them, then that's what our Mobile Fill product is all about. Its job is to return fast and accurate data. So again, your user would hover their smartphone over their driver's license, state ID, passport, or a variety of other documents. It would auto-capture it for them, extract the data so that the form could be pre-filled for your end user. And of course, you would get the confidence of knowing that the data originated from an identity document, so it would have high data integrity. But where I'm really going to focus for the demos is the product all the way to the right, which is called Mobile Verify. So Mobile Verify includes the capabilities of the prior two, along with the added benefit of validating the authenticity of the captured identity document. So again, the user will hover their mobile device over their identity document. It'll capture the image, it'll extract the data, but it can also validate instantly that it's an authentic identity document. So this is obviously a great tool for KYC purposes, and as Julie mentioned, to help you combat application fraud by knowing your applicant has in hand an authentic identity document for the expected name. So focusing in a bit more on Mobile Verify, I'd like to give just a little bit of color in terms of the common pain point we hear a lot about in our conversations with financial service providers. So hopefully this will sound familiar to those of you that are listening. If you have a different perspective or a different pain point, again, I'd love to hear about it. My email will be at the end of the slides. But what this graphic is depicting that in general in the U.S. for FIs that do have a digital account onboarding process, this tends to be tied to an existing identity verification technique that generally relies on data as well as knowledge-based authentication or out-of-wallet questions. So it's fairly well known that there's a gap in terms of coverage where not all applicants can be verified by data and questions that generally rely on them having past financial history. So the most notable cohort in the gap, of course, are younger applicants with thin files, as well as unbanked and underbanked. But what I think is interesting and what I've seen evolve recently is the gap is widening. So Julie mentioned the rampant data breaches and the availability of PII on the black market. In 2015 alone, 278 million records were breached. And this, of course, has caused FIs to look at the knowledge-based authentication questions and oftentimes make them harder, right? It's too easy for fraudsters to get through because there's too much data floating around. So in order to have solid identity verification, you need to make the process harder, which makes it harder for real users to get through. So we see the soft reject queue as something that's been growing. And what do you do with those users that can't get through identity verification? You can have them go to a branch and show their identity document. Someone trying to interact from their mobile device is not going to love having to do that. Or you can have them submit a photocopy and hire an operations team to sort through that in your back-end process. Julie mentioned that, and that's obviously not a greatly efficient operation to hold in-house. So this is where Mobile Verify can really help. For those users, you can keep them on their mobile device through a digital channel, have them scan their identity document, and have it instantly and reliably authenticated for you so that you can proceed them through the process. So when we look at Mobile Verify, we really look at it as a tool to help you combat application fraud, to provide more security around the identity verification you can achieve through the digital or mobile channel. But it's also a tool that allows you to give your users a great mobile user experience. So I'd like to say that, what we look at Mitek is the intersection of identity security and user experience are not mutually exclusive. And that's where we really like to position and innovate in terms of what we can offer you with mobile capture and Mobile Verify. So let me go ahead and jump into a couple of demos. So the first demo you're going to look at is going to be Mobile Verify through a native app. And here you're going to see our MySnap user experience. It is auto capture. And we're going to start with scanning the back of the driver's license. The vast majority of driver's licenses in the U.S. have this dense barcode known as a PDF 417 barcode. And you can see that I just hovered the device over the back of the license, and MySnap automatically detected the barcode and put a little green box around it so the user knows that something happened. So from here, we can automatically parse the data, and that helps us tune the user experience around capturing the front so that it can be tuned for the expected state. So here again, we're hovering the mobile device over the front of the license, and it is an auto capture experience so that when the license is sharp enough and in good enough lighting and large enough, it will automatically capture that license. I've obviously paused the demo here so that I could have some time to talk about it. And you can see at the bottom of the screen both a word that says captured as well as a word that says verified. So the license was not only captured, but within that user experience, which was only a few seconds long, Mobile Verify also verified that this is in fact an authentic Texas driver's license. It does say sample on it, but this is a license that was printed for us by the DMV of Texas, so being authentic is the expected result. As an FI, you would receive back the data that you can pre-fill into the user's form, as well as that authentic result that you can use to give you KYC assurance. And you can see there's some of the data that you would receive back. Next, I'm going to show you another native use case that highlights one of the great features of Mobile Verify, and that is that it is a tamper-proof algorithm. So once again, I started with capturing the back, and you can see that as an easy way to demo tampering with a license, I took my face and put it on top of the portrait on the license. Again, it's an auto capture user experience, and it did find the license was in good enough condition to capture the image, but Mobile Verify also detected that the license had been tampered with, and in that case, it would never return an authentic result. So those are our native use cases. Now I'm going to show you mobile web. So usage of using the browser from a mobile device has exploded in recent years. There is more web traffic coming from mobile than from desktop. And of course, you want your users who find your products and services through mobile web to be able to proceed from the Google search results through an onboarding process easily. And that's what Mobile Verify for mobile web can do for you. So you can see that using the browser, I did capture an image of the front of the license. This is a real license, so we did redact the data. And now using mobile web, I can go ahead and also capture the back of the license. So unlike native, this is not automatically capturing for me, but we do have very sophisticated computer vision science technology built into the browser such that it does instantly evaluate the quality of the images that I captured. And I did capture good images that were then sent for very quick data extraction. So from a user perspective, my form has been pre-filled for me. I have a great mobile web user experience. You could see at the bottom, it took a couple extra seconds to also verify the authenticity of the license. This is a real license, so I received back a very high verification score. You probably wouldn't generally show that to an end user, but we're showing it for demo purposes. But as an FI, that score is something that you could then use to be confident that that user onboarding with your product or service through a browser does in fact have an authentic driver's license in their hand. So that's our native capability. That's our mobile web capability for Mobile Verify. My contact info is below. Would love to hear from anyone on the webinar. And thank you very much.
Excellent. Thanks so much. That was awesome. And we've got some time here for questions, and I see some good questions in the queue here. So let me jump right into it here. Let me see what we have. First question, let me ask Julie, are deposit accounts less at risk for a rise in app fraud than credit card originations?
That's a good question. I actually get that one quite a bit when I'm speaking on this. And the short answer is no. Yeah, that used to be the case, I think, in some of the countries that have gone. But as I've talked to some of the folks in Canada about their experiences, as I've been interviewing US FIs about their experience here, we're seeing it's really an equal opportunity game here for the criminals. They are looking at lots of different ways to capitalize on the fact that in many cases DDA accounts have a little bit lower bar in terms of what has to be done from a front end vetting perspective. You're not pulling a credit bureau in most cases when you're boarding a DDA account. And so they are getting in the door on the DDA side of the house. In some cases, they are then becoming sleeper accounts, and they're just expanding their relationships with the banks, getting the lines of credit over time, and then busting out. In other cases, they get in the door and they capitalize on the opportunity right away. So, leveraging the ability to do, mobile RDC, or just getting checks and starting to do a bunch of kiting. So I'm hearing that the rise in application fraud is happening on both sides of the house.
Excellent, thank you. And let's see here, I have a question here for Sarah, I think. Do those pictures remain on the phone's photo library after being taken through mobile web?
So the answer to that is, in general, no. At MyTech, we do have a guiding principle to never leave any image on a user's device as part of the functionality we provide through our SDKs, and that applies to native and mobile web. That said, in the mobile web ecosystem, not everything can be controlled. So there are some segment of Android devices and Chrome browsers that will. And as part of what we deliver to the market is a blacklist. So if it's a requirement that you never want an image to be left on the camera roll for your end users, you can utilize our blacklist and know that that will never happen. If, on the other hand, you prefer inclusion of every single Android device and Chrome browser in your solution, then you're free to do that and disregard the blacklist.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks, Sarah. And let's see, a lot of good questions in here. I want to thank the audience, and please, if you've got any lingering question, please put it in the queue. We will get to it if we can. And let me see, next question for Julie. What is the correlation between using an EMV card and mobile phone app fraud? I'm definitely not a techie, and I'm not understanding how the EMV card correlates with mobile phone app fraud.
So it's basically a matter of as we move to EMV, we're going to see over the next couple years about $3.5 billion worth of fraud gradually go out of the criminals' coffers, because EMV is very effective at clamping down on counterfeit card fraud. The organized crime rings that are behind these fraud attacks aren't just going to sit back and take a $3.5 billion blow to their P&L. So they're going to shift their tactics. And they, as we've seen in other countries, that's one of the good things about being the last G20 country to go, is we can look to a lot of lessons, is that they shift to account takeover, they shift to card not present fraud, and they shift to application fraud. And it's just a matter of leveraging new data sources, leveraging new attack vectors, and switching their focus to other things. So ultimately, as you look at the numbers from the UK or Canada, who both countries have done a great job of tracking the decrease in counterfeit card fraud and the increase of other types of fraud, ultimately it's kind of a net zero game. Doesn't mean we shouldn't be trying to crack down on counterfeit card fraud, but it does mean that we need to bolster our defenses in other areas, because the criminals are going to focus there more intensively.
Okay, gotcha, understood, wonderful. Thank you for that answer. And let me see, I think there's a couple questions in here for Sarah. Sarah, are all fields on the DL verified?
So I can dive in a bit more into how Mobile Verify works. When you saw the instant authenticity verification in the native user experience, that is scanning for the presence of an enhanced security feature, which is invisible to the naked eye but printed into the format of U.S. driver's licenses. So long story short, that security feature does include highly protected encrypted data, which means that if we're able to find that security feature and decrypt it, the end effect is that all of the fields on the driver's license are essentially verified, and it is an absolute result that that is, in fact, an authentically issued driver's license. In cases where the native is not used, we do, like mobile web, for example, we do use other algorithms that look for the presence of other security features, as well as do other checks of the data. So we do a comparison of the data in the barcode with the data on the front of the license. We also look for expected formats within the data, check digits, and such things when available. Mobile Verify is really checking the authenticity of the license itself. It is not cross-checking the data with any external sources. Thank you.
Gotcha. And there's another question here, and let me ask you, Sarah. Maybe you covered it. Where does the data for Mobile Verify, where is it sourced from?
Yeah, so it's not really sourcing data. It's running a series of algorithms that are looking at the authenticity of the license itself, based off of, the format, the enhanced security feature, known check digits within the data, a comparison of the front and the back, template matching techniques. So there are a whole bunch of algorithms that get processed to evaluate the authenticity of the license, but it's not sourcing data from an external source to do that.
Excellent. Thanks for that clarification. All right. Okay. Great questions flowing in. Thank you once again to the audience for putting these in. All right. Next question, and let me direct this one to Julie. What are best practices for building customer awareness of mobile onboarding?
Good question. As I've been talking to the executives as part of this research, a lot of them really were waiting until they got their risk infrastructure in place before they really started pushing hard on the marketing side for mobile onboarding. And so I would say that one is the number one best practice. That said, especially among the bigger banks that I spoke with, I think we're going to see a lot of those marketing efforts start ramping up in 2016 because we are seeing that a lot of efforts are going into making that mobile process more secure and more user-friendly. And I think those two things have to go hand in hand because you're dealing with such limited real estate. We're also talking to executives about the need to have the ability to tailor the onboarding experience to the real estate of the mobile device. And so you'll have a different flow in your smartphone environment than you will in the tablet environment. And then I think the other key best practice, and I think quite frankly this one is still a work in progress at a lot of institutions, is having the ability that if the customer does get stuck and decides that they do need to go into the branch to get some help, that they can save that and start over. So, bringing in a true omni-channel component. Right now, the norm, unfortunately, is if somebody gets stuck, then they have to go into the branch and start over from scratch, which, again, is not the best user experience and it can certainly lead to some of that fall-off and attrition we see.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Next question for Sarah. In addition to driver's license document verification, does MyTech enable facial verification by allowing applicant to take a picture of themselves along with the DL to verify they are the same person? How does that work?
So in short, yes, we do. And that's somewhat what I was alluding to earlier, that I was going to focus on identity documents for the webinar, but that we do have other products that can help optimize the mobile channel for customer acquisition. So we do have, included with our SDK, selfie capture capabilities with liveness detection incorporated as part of that, so you can be sure that it's a live user capturing their face. And then we do have different products that can accomplish the comparison of the selfie to the identity document. So short answer is yes.
Wonderful, thank you. All right, another question for you. Sarah, does the mobile phone require a special app to be on the phone in order to capture the image of the DL?
What we deliver from Mitek are SDKs. So what that means is you would take our SDK and provide it to your mobile app development team. And if you have a native app, the SDK is something they would essentially drop into the native app code base. And one of the strengths of our SDK is being fully brandable. So it provides the image capture, the auto capture functionality, and all of the science that makes that work really well. But when your developers drop our SDK into your mobile app, they can brand it so that it matches the look and feel and the user experience of the rest of your app. If you noticed when I went through the demos, I intentionally showed a user experience where we got some real-time messages to get closer. That's an example of something that can be completely customized. The SDK will provide your developers with events, and the way that the messages are shown to your users can exactly match how messages in the rest of your app look. Same thing if you have a mobile web app, which is basically a website or a responsive site that runs in a browser. We have a mobile web SDK that your web developers would take and drop into your responsive web site. So again, we provide that image capture and all of the science, and it can be branded to look consistent with the rest of your responsive web mobile experience.
Excellent. Thank you. All right, here we go. Next question, also for Sarah. For point-of-sale consumer loan platforms, can the data from documents such as driver's licenses, W-2s, pay stubs be captured, then easily extracted and pushed to an automated underwriting system?
So the short answer to that is yes. When looking at the product suite, the one that I had in the middle was something called Mobile Fill. So if really you're most interested in the data, extracting data, making it easy for your end users, as well as getting that extracted data as something you can use downstream, then that's exactly the product capabilities that Mobile Fill provides. So we do support a wide variety of identity documents, again, U.S., global, passports. We do support other types of documents such as W-2s and bill coupons. So there are a variety of documents that Mobile Fill will support that are really geared towards different types of FI onboarding, including loan origination.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. And let me direct this next question to Julie. How secure is capturing the identity document with the mobile device?
I think that one kind of goes back to one of the first questions that Sarah was asked. Yeah, if you have the security in place to make sure that those images don't stay on the mobile device, then yeah, I think there's a significant amount of security, especially since this is via an SDK plugging into the bank's own mobile app, and so it can leverage all of the embedded security there as well. The only point of exposure that I would see is for those handful of devices that Mitek has on their blacklist, where the data resides, and there your exposure would just be, if that person that took the picture then gets the malware on their device, then it would be exposed. And today, while mobile malware is quite small, especially compared to online malware, it's growing, and that'll continue to grow as transaction volume in mobile continues to grow at just such a hockey stick pace.
Great. Thank you, Julie. And let me see here. A question for Sarah. How is the Mitek solution implemented by FIs? Is it software as a solution or installed?
So we're flexible. As I mentioned, there are two pieces to the solution. The first piece being the mobile capture SDK, which your app or web developers would take and put into the native app or the responsive website. But we also do have a server component, and we do offer that as a SaaS solution, very quick and easy to get started interacting with. We do also deliver our product on-premise so that it can be installed in your data center. So we support both, and we're more than happy to work with our customers on sort of the right solution to meet your needs.
Perfect. Thank you, Sarah. And on that note, I think we will wrap things up. We're just a few minutes from the top of the hour, but we've gotten through all of our questions. We've had quite a few questions, and I want to thank the audience once again for asking them all. But we'll give you back 4 or 5 minutes of your day, which is usually helpful, given everyone's very, very busy schedules. But let me once again thank Julie and Sarah for being here today. It's been a great discussion, lots of wonderful content with the demonstration, and always when we have so many questions from the audience, it's a great sign that it's something that's resonated with them. So thank you for being here. Thank you, the audience. Really wonderful. We would not want to do it without you. So thank you for being here and asking so many questions and so being so completely engaged with this today. I just want to let everyone know that's with us today that we will be sending you a follow-up email in the next 24 to 48 hours that will have a link to the recording of this event and also to the slides themselves. So please keep an eye out for that and review at your leisure. We certainly encourage you to do that. And with that, I'll wrap it up. Wish everyone a wonderful rest of the day, and I hope you'll join us again here very soon. Thanks so much.